So, we've had a bit of a run of it, haven't we? 4 goals in the last 3 games that Norwich have scored, 10 wins out of 12, top of the league, all that sort of stuff. And it's nicer football and quite typical of football to offer the odd reality check. So I think we got one of those here at a wet, cold Tuesday night in Hull, where it of course has finished goalless. Norwich City having to take away a point. They, I believe at the moment, are still top. I don't know if that is affected by tomorrow's games, because the other half of the Championship fixture programme of midweek is tomorrow, but with Leeds winning, Middlesbrough drawing, Norwich remain top, but of course it's all a bit closer, blah blah, long way to go and all that sort of stuff. I think this sort of thing was probably likely to happen. Having done the live coverage over at PinkUn.com, I've seen words like clueless and poor and all this sort of stuff. I'm not going to use many of those. I am going to be reasonably objective in terms of where we are and how the game was, though, because I think Norwich shaded it on chances. I think they did enough to have won it, and they had the best chances, clearly. Tom Treibel, who came in from Morris Leitner, who was injured today and is having a scan on his calf, or he's had it, they're waiting for the results. Might be that Moritz can't come back for Saturday either, but hopefully he won't be out for too long. So Tom got a recall, and he had the 2 best chances, actually. He had a very decent sight of goal down that end in the first half that David Marshall got a hand to, which was enough just to flick it beyond the far post. I don't know if he knew much about it, and it was a greasy ball and all that sort of stuff. In the second half, though, wonderful ball in from Max Aarons and Tom Treibel running onto it, heading it wide from about 10 yards. It was a glorious chance, the sort of chance you have to take, really. And sadly, Tom could only send it just past the far post. Now, Tom, he cramped up after that, which probably isn't too much of a surprise. But Tom did okay today, and I think given he hasn't had a huge amount of first-team football, that would probably take that. And a lot of people have said, we missed Moritz Leitner, and fair enough. Of course Norwich missed Moritz Leitner. He's a wonderful, talented player, and his ability as a metronome just to keep the ball moving and ticking and it just allows Norwich to do things a lot quicker, I think. The song is, of course, that Tom Treibel never gives the ball away, but Moritz is the one really who rarely loses possession, and Tom struggled a little bit at times, which is probably a good sign. It tells us just how far Norwich have come since it was Tom and Alex in the middle. But that said, as I said, Tom had the 2 best chances. He carried a goal threat today, and Mo doesn't really do that. So it swings and roundabouts. Norwich were open and exposed at times in midfield. And Hull probably came to the point halfway through the second half where it was a question of, do we keep this stretched and really go for it, or do we all sit in and try and take a point and hold on to what we've got and see what we can do on the counter? And that is very much what they did. And in fairness, that says a lot for Norwich, that Hull didn't want to open things up, because they know Norwich probably would have gone on to win the game, because they'd have got that a little bit of extra space that even when Norwich maybe went at 100%, they couldn't take advantage. So this wasn't a poor performance from Norwich. Clearly it wasn't at the level as it has been in the past, but I would refuse to call this a poor performance. Likewise, takes 2 to tango, and I think at this point Hull deserves huge credit. I've seen Hull play, the last 4 times I've seen Norwich play Hull, 4, maybe 3, both last season and then today. They're not a bad side. They always look pretty decent. They always look good going forwards. They don't look a nightmare defensively, although I think they did it maybe here last year at times. But, they worked really hard today. Defensively, they put so much effort in. They looked reasonably compact most of the time. They threw themselves in front of shots. The number of block shots was huge, which tells you a lot about the endeavour they were putting in. They worked really hard. So Hull obviously can do it against Norwich. They must be absolute... Well, I'm not going to swear, but what happens to them against everyone else in the division? Because they always seem to be really struggling as well. So they obviously just cannot do it consistently. Norwich will come up against this. They'll come up against sides who will fancy taking on the leaders, or one of the teams who are up there and proving a point. And that's clearly what Hull wanted to do today. They put in effort. They never, as I said, they sat back. I don't know if they tired, but they clearly wanted to hold on to what they had got by the end of it. And that sort of gave Norwich maybe a at least allowed them to really put on some pressure, but they couldn't take advantage of it. So it'll be interesting to see what Hull do from here, because on this evidence, if they play like this every week, they won't finish in the bottom three, but clearly they don't, so probably they will. It'll be interesting watching from afar as to what they do. Clearly they missed Fraser Campbell today, so that probably did Norwich a little bit of a favour in turn. Chris Martin looked particularly rusty and was barely involved, to be honest. We barely noticed him. I think that's about it, really. Emi Buendia, everyone was raving about him. He could have scored one of the best goals I'd ever seen, only he sent his shot over. And he worked really hard. He did overhit a couple of passes that it should have just been fairly straightforward, and that was a shame. And I didn't necessarily see him put in as much work defensively as I'd seen him in the most recent games as well in the first half. So still clearly more to come from Emi, but I have no doubt, and I know I put out a tweet earlier, but he can quite clearly do it on a Tuesday night in Hull. So plenty more to come from Emi, of course. And I think that Daniel made a good point. The pitch, they just brought out the lawnmowers actually when Daniel was doing his press after the game here, and he said, "Oh, I don't know why they've done that. They haven't mowed the pitch for 2 weeks. They probably could have waited another day." He did say that off the record, so I probably shouldn't have quoted him there. But there we go. Quite clearly, Norwich are going to come up against teams on pitches worse than their own. But what Daniel did say, in fairness to him, is that if you are in those situations, in these conditions, you have to concentrate better, play simple, play quick, and concentrate really hard on what you're doing, because you obviously can't take your eye off the ball. And you know what? That's fair enough. And Norwich didn't do that well enough tonight, and that is ultimately why they've left with a point rather than getting particularly closer to getting 3. But I think it's a fair result. We all move on. Of course, it's Rotherham. Paul Warne's Rotherham at Carrow Road on Saturday, Bolton the following weekend. It's bit hard at the moment, maybe, with how well things have been going, not to start looking ahead at the points and what Norwich could do and this, that and the other. So this is probably quite handy just to bring everyone back into a bubble, and hopefully Carrow Road will appreciate that and really get stuck into driving Norwich over the line to a really good result at the weekend. It's fair to say I think it's 13 games since Norwich failed to score away from home, so it's been a phenomenal run. And of course, what do you do when you see the end of a phenomenal run? You go and try and do another one. So let's hope that happens at Carrow Road come Saturday, and we'll be there, of course. All the reaction and analysis from tonight, more to come, of course, over in the PinkUn app and PinkUn.com. And I hope you're enjoying all our coverage this season. We'll see you at Carrow Road for Rotherham on Saturday.